Breaking news coming in right now. President Museveni has just released online on his X handle what we've now got to learn as the new cabinet list for 2026-2031. Of course, there are a couple of surprises in there. Museveni has released this list on his X handle, and we do now understand from this particular list that the retired Major Honorable Jessica Alupo has returned as Vice President. The Prime Minister has also been maintained and will be Robina Nabanja. Now, there's going to be a couple of surprises in this new cabinet list that I'm going to read has been released by the President. Let's begin with the cabinet ministers. The first Deputy Prime Minister, the Honorable Rebecca Kadaga, has been maintained, but we have someone who has bounced to a cabinet, that is Dr. Crispus Walter Chionga as second Deputy Prime Minister. The third Deputy Prime Minister, and that is Minister without Portfolio, Honorable Lukia Nakadama. It means that the Honorable Moses Ali has been dropped off the list as Deputy Prime Minister. The Minister of Education and Sports, Honorable Janet Kataha Museveni, has been retained as the Minister for Education and Sports. Let's get into the Minister for Presidency and Office of the President. The Honorable Babirye Miri Babalanda has been maintained. The Minister Office of the President in charge of Security, the Honorable Jim Mwezi, has also been maintained. And then we get to the Minister Office of the President in charge of Science, Technology and Innovation. We now see Engineer Asimwe Jonad. Engineer Asimwe Jonad is the Vice Chairperson that is in charge of Western Uganda for the NRM. He does sit in SEC. Engineer Asimwe Jonad is the new Minister in charge of Science, Technology and Innovation, an office that has been previously occupied by Honorable Dr. Musenero. The Minister for Kampala City and Metropolitan Affairs, Minsa Kavanda, has maintained that one. Minister Office of the Prime Minister General Duties, we see Hilary Onek leave the docket for refugees to go into the Office of Prime Minister General Duties. The Government Chief Whip, the person who has been occupying the office of the Ministry without Portfolio, that is Justin Kasule Lumumba, has now been appointed the Government Chief Whip. She previously served as the NRM General Secretary. We get to the Minister Office of the Prime Minister, Relief, Disaster Preparedness and Refugees. We see Sam Engola being appointed in there. Minister for Karamoja Affairs, Honorable Loki John Baptist. Minister of Agriculture, Animal Industry and Fisheries, Honorable Frank Tumwebaze, has been maintained in that particular docket. And ladies and gentlemen, we have a new Attorney General. The man who has been in charge of the Lands Ministry docket, Honorable Sam Mayanja, comes in there to be the Attorney General. The Minister of Defense and Veteran Affairs, the man who has been the Attorney General for quite about 6 years now, Honorable Chiriowa Chuanuka, will be the new Minister of Defense and Veteran Affairs. Let's get into the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development. And now the Dr. Monica Musenero Msanza, who has been in the docket of Science, Technology and Innovation, goes into the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development, replacing Ruth Nankabirwa, who we will later see where she has been deployed as a senior presidential advisor. The Minister of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, Henry Musasizi, who has been a state minister, now goes up, replacing Matia Kaseja. And now we have a minister, new Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Adonia Ayebade, replacing General J.J. Odongo. We do have a new Minister for Gender, Labor and Social Development, a man who once ran for presidency, that is Lieutenant General Henry Tumukunde Kakurungu. We do have a new Minister of Health. He does bounce back into this particular docket, Dr. Chris Baryomunsi. We do also have a new Minister of Information, Communications Technology and National Guidance. The lady doctor who has been serving in the Ministry of Health now moves to the Ministry of Information, Dr. Jen Ruth Acheng Ochero. We do also have a new Minister of Internal Affairs, Honorable Professor Ephraim Kamuntu, replacing that is General Otafide. We do have the same minister being retained in the same docket of Justice and Constitutional Affairs, Honorable Norbert Mao, the President General of the Democratic Party. The Minister of Lands, Housing and Urban Development, Judith Nabakuba, has retained that post. We also have a new Minister for Local Government who has moved from the Ministry of Gender as State Minister. And now Balam Bargahara, who will be the new Minister of Local Government, replacing the minister who has been there. And now General Katumba Wamala has been redeployed from the Ministry of Works and Transport to the Ministry of Public Service. The Ministry of Tourism, Tom Butime, and that is also been deployed there. We do also have the Minister of Trade, Industry and Cooperatives, Sanjay Tana, has eaten big in that one. Major General Kahindo Tafire, who has been in the Ministry of Internal Affairs, has been deployed in the Ministry of Water and Environment. We do have the same person who has been in the Ministry of Works and Transport as State Minister, now goes a ladder up. That is Honorable Fred Byamkama. Let's take a look at other ministers, and I'm sure you'll see a couple of shocks and surprises in here. We do have other ministers of state. Let's begin with the Office of the President. The Minister of State, Office of the President, Economic Monitoring, Honorable Alum Sandra Santa. That one is being deployed in that docket. Minister of State, Office of the President, Ethics and Integrity, Akelo Rose has maintained or been retained in that particular ministry. We do have the Minister of State, Office of the Vice President, Diana Mutasingwa Nankunda, has been maintained in that particular docket. We do have Office of the Prime Minister, Minister of State of the Prime Minister, Relief, Disaster Preparedness and Refugees, Honorable Lilian Aber, has been maintained in that ministry. Minister of State, Office of Prime Minister in charge of Northern Uganda, Beatrice Akelo. We do have Minister of State in charge of Karamoja Affairs, Anyakun Esther Davinia. We do have Minister of State in charge of Luero Triangle, Rwenzori region, and that is Honorable Alice Kaboyo, who has been maintained in the same position. The Minister of State in charge of Bunyoro Affairs, Grace Mary Mugasa. Minister of State in charge of Teso Affairs, Dr. Ongalo Obote. Let's get into the Ministry of Agriculture, Animal Industry and Fisheries. The Minister of State, that is Desire Mohoza. The Minister of State right there also is Honorable Bright Rwamirama, has been maintained in that particular docket. And then we also have another Minister of State for Agriculture, Migade Robert Ndugwa. Let's get to the Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs. We do have the Deputy Attorney General, Honorable Jackson Kafuzi, who had earlier shown interest in running for the Deputy Speakership. He has been maintained in that docket. He has been in there for the last 6 years. The State Minister for Defense and Veteran Affairs, we do have Honorable Akfeza Grace Ngabirano. She did come through a by-election the other term and also was on an independent ticket defeating NRM. And now she comes in after 2021 and wins on an NRM ticket, and she has now also eaten big. The Minister of State for Defense and Veteran Affairs, Honorable Oleru Huda, has also eaten big on there. Minister of East African Affairs, we do have Magode Ekuya. The Ministry of Education, State Minister for Education and Sports, Higher Education, Dr. Chrysostom Muyingo, maintains that docket. We do have also Honorable Peter Ogwang, who will be in charge of sports, has also maintained that docket. And then Primary Education will be Phyllis Chemtai. Let's get to the Ministry of Energy. The State Minister who will be in charge of energy will be Sidronius Opolot Okasai, and also have Fiona Nyamtoro, who will be in charge of minerals development, who has also been maintained in that particular docket. The State Minister in charge of finance for general duties will be Sisi Mulondo, and also in charge of economic development and planning, Amos Olugorobi, has been maintained in that particular docket. State Minister for Finance in charge of privatization and investment, Amina Mukalazi, has replaced Evelyn Anite, who will later see that she was also now redeployed as Senior Presidential Advisor. The Honorable Shatsi Kutesa Musherure, who was talked out of an election in Zimbabwe to allow Sodo Aine Kaguta, has also been given a docket. That is Minister of State for Finance, Planning and Economic Development, and she'll be in charge of microfinance. We do have the Minister of State for Foreign Affairs, International Affairs, Calvin Echedu. He's also a SEC member of the NRM. And then we also have Cheyune Haruna Kaselo, Minister of State for Foreign Affairs, who will be in charge of regional affairs. Has been redeployed from Ministry for Microfinance to Ministry of Foreign Affairs as State Minister. Let's get into the state ministers under Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development. We have Honorable Kutesa Mary Kamli, who will be in charge of gender and culture.